Hey guys, here we are. Welcome to the Fanboy Planet podcast. I'm Derek and Ric, editor-in-chief of fanboyplanet.com. And you can see, because StreamYard always plays with my mind, that we've got a full deck tonight. Ooh, we do. Unfortunately, Nate Costa couldn't join us, but in addition, of course, we have a special guest in the middle here.
I'm the man in the middle.
Yes, identify yourself. This is what happens when we go live, folks. Here we are. So anyway, and of course, I don't know if it plays out exactly the same on your screens as it does on mine, but to my far right, podcast producer from the Brett Cave,
Brett Snyder.
Yes, and here we are tonight. Thanks for joining us live if you have. And so, of course, want to say if you want to join the conversation, I've got it down below. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Fanboy Planet. You can also join the conversation by emailing to editor@fanboyplanet.com. And things we speak about on this podcast, if you'd like to purchase them for yourself and you kind of find it at your local brick and mortar store, we do, of course, have Amazon links. We are affiliated with Amazon, which means that a purchase made through a search box on fanboyplanet.com may result in revenue for us. As well as there are some direct links when we talk about stuff to bookshop.org, which means that actually the purchase is about the same, except that the money gets, you can actually earmark it for your favorite local small bookstore and keep them, help keep them a little afloat if you are in an area where you can't actually go to your local bookshop. I'm hoping it's not too many more months of this. I mean, I'd still stay with bookshop.org, but, you know, I'm hoping we'll be able to actually go to our small businesses and feel comfortable doing that. You know, so amen, right, guys? Okay, so tonight we do want to talk about Zack Snyder's Justice League, which I think is the nerd news of the week, and I do want to call out, thank you, Yvette Keller, for tuning in, and happy Sunday to you.
Hi, Yvette.
Yeah, there we go. See, there's a comment. Well, that's good. Rick needs friends. So anyway, before we turn it over to the nerd news of the week, which is Zack Snyder's Justice League, I do want to give a kind of the book of the week, what's in the bag, and I'm woefully behind. So this is Rick's choice. Ready? I have no idea what's coming.
Oh, wow. Going right to it.
Snyder's going in there.
Okay, so this is partially inspired by Sal, who's here today, and we all share a joy of this particular character, but I know Sal is particularly passionate worshiper, and this week
Brenda Starr.
Yeah, are you going to take a guess, Sal?
Well, it's not Brenda Starr, I'm guessing. So, is it Bond related?
It is Bond related. So, Dynamite's been doing Bond stuff, and last week, they came out with issue 1 of James Bond, Agent of Spectre. Which, when I first heard about this, I'm going, oh wow, you know, they're gonna start doing like Elseworld stuff, you know. Then, but this is not necessarily Elseworld any more than any of the comics that they're doing are Elseworld. In this, we get a fairly rational set of experiences that lead Bond to team up with Ernst Stavros Blofeld, and a fairly threatening version of Blofeld. Probably more threatening than we've seen in any of the movies. So it's Christos Gage is writing this, and Luca Calzagida, I think it is the artist.
Someone may correct us, and that's okay.
And I highly recommend it. I went into it with a little bit of trepidation. I have to admit, I haven't been incredibly happy with all of the more recent Bond comics. Some have been a little bit too twisty, cerebral, unspoken motivation kind of stuff, but this was really a solid book.
Well, I'll be sure to pick it up when I go back into my store next week, I guess. It's probably going to be sitting in my pile. You know, I've found the Dynamite's Bond stuff to be, as you said, kind of a mixed bag. I really like the way they've updated some of the characters and situations. I've found the storytelling to be a little difficult to follow from issue to issue sometimes.
Yeah.
But you know, they did a twist on Oddjob, a twist on Goldfinger, and I thought that was clever. It was that Greg Pak who did that, I think.
Greg Pak wrote some of the miniseries. Yeah.
And I think he might have done the Odd Job stuff, and that was pretty well done.
And Christos Gage.
Dynamite's done actual graphic novels of Casino Royale and Live and Let Die that are just straight adaptations. So they've been doing some interesting stuff with the property, and it's nice to see Bond sort of expanding into this area again for the first time, 50 years since he was a comic strip in the UK?
Yeah, easily.
Probably closer to 50,
I think that run was in the 60s. And
I think it was in the 60s.
And ended in the early 70s, I think.
Yeah.
So,
okay, so it's been about 50
I remember
60s.
They were serialized in the comic Buyer's Guide. I think that was right. They did that along with Modesty Blaze, both from the same kind of era of British comics.
Okay. I should add in, of course, here, not just to bet, if there's anyone else who has any comments throughout, by all means, any questions we talk, let's get to it. I did want to say, of course, Christos Gage, we've actually talked to him on the podcast a couple of times, and he is perhaps both best known and not known for being one of the main writers on the Spider-Man video game and Miles Morales Spider-Man video games. So he is a terrific writer. So I'm really pleased that you recommended it. I totally somehow missed that he had written Agent of Spectre. So now I have to go back to Earth 2 and say, do you guys still have this by any chance? Or look for it elsewhere. Perhaps I'll wait for it on graphic novel form and pick it up on bookshop.org. Like that? Okay. So let's get to other ways we've spent our money, which is by subscribing, some of us paying subscription fees to HBO Max. It's not the reason I did it, but here is the week that we have launched, that Warner Brothers launched Zack Snyder's Justice League. Now, Sal Pizarro, officially man about town at Mercury News, has a limited amount of time, and he has not yet had the 15 hours required to watch this entire thing. But you have watched enough to say you can speak about the structure.
Yes, I've watched enough to where I can talk about it, and I know a lot of what happens otherwise in the parts that I haven't watched. I have not tried to go into this spoiler-free. So
okay, well, the good guys win. I mean, right? And so I will say that if you are someone who has been successfully dodging spoilers and really have not found the 4 hours, I think it actually is.
It's 4 hours.
To watch it, then I'm not hurt if you say, I'm just going to put this podcast away for a while until I have time to watch it. Or if you don't care and just want to hear what we have to think about it, that's fine too. But I'm just, there will be spoilers ahead. There's really kind of no way around that. So
for anybody who's hesitating on 4 hours, it is nicely broken up into chapters. And you could just say, I'm just going to watch one chapter, and each chapter is about 40 minutes long. They're not all even, but yeah.
Now, we watched the first 2 chapters the night it dropped, and then realized, well, we have to work in the morning. And there's not a cut on that. It was just that, it was late when we were able to get started. And so we watched the rest Friday night. And I'm going to say the odd thing is what I suspected. Like Batman v Superman, when Zack Snyder was allowed to do his extended director's cut, though it made it about an hour longer, and in this case, made the movie about 2 hours longer, it is a better film. But I'm not 100% sure I can say it is a great film or it is the Justice League we waited for. So, because I still don't like the way he thinks Superman is. But that's.
I went back and because I've got a lot more time than anybody really should on my hands. And
your official title is Gentleman of Leisure. And Sal, can we get a Mercury column for Rick?
And it would just be the 3 dots.
Yeah. Every week I can do that.
As long as he can expense his cocktails, that's what really matters.
But what I did go back and watch Man of Steel and Batman v Superman and Wonder Woman.
You did have too much time on your head. I mean, that was great, but
I actually started watching Aquaman and then I realized, oh no, this one comes after. And then I watched Justice League, and I've actually watched the first and the last hour of Justice League 2 times now. So just
I would kill for your schedule right now, Rick. I really would.
I invited Sal on just to get mad at you. That's really.
Well, I'd be happy to have you take over this week because I've been deep cleaning my shower. Getting recalking and I'd be happy to turn that over.
I would take that on. I would absolutely take that on.
Good.
I managed to catch 2 hours. Now my kids are mad at me because they wanted to see. They're like, you started watching Justice League without us, and I said, hey, it's rated R. I need to check it out first to make sure that it's okay for you guys to watch.
Well, Sal, let me help you with that. There are 3 F words, 3 F bombs, 2 of which I accept because they are characters that I don't care that they said it. And the third one, which I think is what makes it the R. I mean, no one's ever really 100% sure what crosses you over from PG-13 to R, but there's the urban myth, at least, and it's prevalent that it's 3 F-bombs. And it's Batman near the very end. And honestly, it's like, oh yeah, for the same reason I didn't like All-Star Batman and Superman. That's not Batman, even pushed to the edge. That doesn't make it edgy. That doesn't make it worth an R-rated. It doesn't make the movie better. But
that was Ben Affleck.
Well, and then he took a swig of vodka, and no, I don't want to make light of it. I know there's a lot of pressure, and I'll say out of this, that's one of the, to me, almost like the tragedies of all the crap that went down with this is the amount of pressure that cast was actually under. Both, I won't say necessarily Zack Snyder's part, but all what we're now finding out, all the weird things and that Warner Brothers was doing, the pressure putting on, that it kind of drove. It was so much on Ben Affleck, who was going to then write, direct, and star in the next film, the next Batman solo movie, and then he stepped back. He's like, "Well, I'm not going to direct it." And Matt Reeves stepped in, and then Matt Reeves had his own take, and so Ben Affleck said, "Okay, you don't need to use my screenplay." And then he finally went like, "I just can't take it," and stepped away to work on his mental health. Allegedly, he came back to do some scenes for Zack Snyder, and whatever they are, whatever those shots are, I can't tell. So I do want to say, let's throw on some positives. Definitely, Ben Affleck's performance is allowed to be stronger. He's not putting out, and it's not in this case rip on Joss Whedon's one-liners, but he's not throwing those out other than the "I'm rich" line, and that was Zack Snyder. So I was cool.
He also gets to brood more.
There's a lot more sense as Batman this time.
There's a lot more quiet time in this version. There's not dialogue isn't just jammed in. They're like when the Amazon temple collapses into the sea, there's notably much more time of quiet before we find out what actually happened. I should admit, I went back and watched the 2-hour cut of Justice League 2.
I've seen that a couple of times because it was all we had, and so then if you've watched more recently, you can correct for me. I felt walking away from Joss Whedon's that the Amazons were all killed by Steppenwolf, and I was pleased. If my memory was wrong, okay, but I was pleased to be confirmed that at least some of them are alive, that Hippolyta has not been killed, that she could appear in later films.
No, that scene where the long chase for the mother box with Steppenwolf ends with the Amazons just flooding over the hill, and that's when Steppenwolf takes off. So they aren't all killed. The ones in the temple, that's Hippolyta hesitated because she knew she was signing their death.
No, she's not in Zack Snyder's, but were they all killed in Joss Whedon's cut of it?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. I was pleased that in Zack Snyder's that this is the positive. It was just one temple. It wasn't all the Amazons.
Right.
So that because clearly, and Patty Jenkins has said the same thing. It's like they want to make it a movie of just the Amazons. And I could see where there would be an audience for that, just like they want to make an Aquaman movie that's about the trench. That's not really about Aquaman. It's about these side characters who, let's face it, might not be as expensive to put in a film from the actor's point of view because their contracts are not as expensive. But on the other hand, I mean, that's kind of cool. I will say I had a moment where I just like, I was so taken aback. And just the 7-year-old me, the very first issue of The Flash I ever had was that, and Rick and some maybe both know this, I don't know which issue it was 1972. Cary Bates, who was the writer of The Flash at the time, is going back to his college town for a class reunion, and he's plotting the next issue of The Flash in his head, and his mental powers grow so great that instead of whatever town it was, this cloud comes up and you see the skyline of Central City. And when Zack Snyder introduces Barry Allen and the skyline of Central City is a dead ringer for what it is in the comics, and I don't think the TV show has ever done that. And you didn't even need this establishing shot from outside. But when I said, I know that panel, it's Irv Novick, it's just like, I think we've said it with every one of Snyder's movies. You can't say he doesn't know the comics and he doesn't, love the comics. I can say I think that he and I have different interpretations of these characters. And hey, Michael David Lynch, since it's CineQuest, I just to call out filmmaker Michael David Lynch. Wasn't his what was his movie? Friends effing Friend? No. Michael saying he enjoyed The Cut, which is cool. I'm just trying to think of the name of his movie, but I know I reviewed it on Fanboy Planet and CineQuest a few years ago. So Michael, man, I really want to hang out with you. Well, and I'm going to agree with this comment. Wish we could have had more of Darkseid. So, and thank you, Michael. Just correct me. It's Dependence Day, so I'm going to make that for the audio podcast.
That's
Dependence Day, which is on Amazon Prime. Really funny comedy about taxes. 'Tis the season. But anyway, let's get back to the Snyder Cut. And I do think that it was nice to see more of the fourth world and to really get that sense of where Steppenwolf, even though I don't like the design of Steppenwolf, where he fits.
When I saw Desaad, I was just like over the hill, over my head.
No, you're over the hill, but you were over the moon.
And then I was over the moon, and then the uncredited Granny Goodness was great.
Yeah. And I'm going to say a Darkseid thing because the Oregon Shakespeare Festival has not responded to me about, I tweeted this out. I saw Ray Porter, who plays Darkseid, play a Dromio in the Comedy of Errors in 1990 at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival. And so I'm so pleased, like, wait a minute, I know who that actor is. And, it's a dumb little past thing, but he's a great classically trained actor, which for Zack Snyder's vision makes sense. And I think in my Batman v Superman review, as much as I get why people don't like it, and I don't really much either, it's operatic. It's opera. And Zack Snyder's Justice League is an opera, to the point that we take a 2-minute song break in Norway or Iceland or wherever that is.
That was kind of weird.
Oh, and don't forget the sweater sniffing.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
That was disturbing. That was just like, yeah.
I have two theories.
Violated. I have two theories, and one is that either Zack Snyder's hoping that Disney will step in, buy Warner Brothers, and his Justice League Frozen crossover can happen, or really though, still coming from the mythology, or rather from the original fairy tale, is that I wouldn't be surprised if he was setting up Ice Maiden in the back of his head and never bothered naming her. Just like, because when he was doing all this originally, right, he thought he had 5 movies to tell this story. And so I'm going to throw out, no, this is the note from a question. Wish we could be getting a part 2 now.
Yeah.
Well, the rumors are that no. As of today, Warner Brothers is saying, maybe, really? Because as of Friday, after like 3 months of Zack Snyder saying, no, this is it, I'm done, they're not going to do this. He gave an interview to Entertainment Weekly, owned by the same company that owns Warner Brothers Studios and HBO Max, and he said, yeah, they might be coming back to me for Justice League Part 2, in which case, all right, I'd come back. So it's all been a big game. We have all been played. And we haven't been played, but it's very interesting that I think after all this, behind the scenes, everything that we were told about what happened, I find this movie, it is what it is, but it is also a revelation of how much we are, and maybe we shouldn't be anyway, but we're not privy to what's really going on behind the scenes. Yes, because of a family tragedy, Zack Snyder did have to step down. One of the reasons, as it has slowly been coming out in the last few months, is it wasn't just the pressure of his family tragedy. It was the pressure of studio notes telling him to make it more like the Avengers, make it more like Marvel, and that wasn't what he wanted to do. So the pressure was getting, he's grieving, he's mourning, and I will never, take anything away from that pain. It made sense for his own mental health, like Ben Affleck stepping away from being Batman, that Zack Snyder had to step away from doing Justice League and heal emotionally and mentally from what was going on with his own family life. The story was that he handpicked Joss Whedon to replace him, to step in, because Joss Whedon had come in to tinker with the script at the studio's request. And then that's not true. Zack Snyder walked away. The studio put Joss Whedon in there because Joss Whedon directed the Avengers. So Joss Whedon must be the guy who can fix this to make Justice League like the Avengers. Now, whether you liked it or not, and I think that movie was a lot of fan service, and the bare bones of the plot are pretty much the same. You can see what was Zack Snyder's, shots still driving the plot of Joss Whedon's version, but you can also see where Joss Whedon just wanted to get to the point. And for the first time after seeing it, I totally get why Ray Fisher was so ticked.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Because this is the Cyborg origin film, and it makes so much more sense. Even though the origin itself is kind of by the numbers superhero, that he got a chance to embody it, and that we got to understand Cyborg's powers better than we really have even on Doom Patrol. That it's like, oh, this part makes sense and this part makes sense, and you get a lot more. I didn't necessarily need Barry Allen saving Iris West, because that's not going to even, that'll pay off if a Flash movie ever gets made. But on the other hand, you realize you don't have to write Barry Allen one-liners. You don't have to write Ezra Miller punchlines in order to make that character light and fun. It's still not the Barry Allen I read in that first Flash comic back in the 70s, but it's a decent take.
Yeah, and that scene is just a reaction to the Quicksilver scene in X-Men. I've forgotten. X-Men, one of the last movies.
Days of Future Past, maybe?
Was it Days of Future Past? Okay.
I love that scene, Rick, because it, much like Derek's, being drawn back to that comic from the 70s, that scene reminded me of Barry Allen's first appearance in Showcase, because you see the hot dogs. Right. And if you remember the first time when he's in the diner and he's seeing everything falling, there's hot dogs on the plate that are falling. And so now there's hot dogs that he grabs out of the air. And I saw that and I thought, oh, that's a nice little thing.
You just earned your place at this panel because you out Zorlacked me. I do not remember that from Showcase number 4.
Yeah, you've got this great panel of Barry Allen looking up, just sort of frozen, and you can see like the peas and the French fries and the hot dogs coming off this plate. So
that makes sense. And I could say that the thing I don't like about Zack Snyder's work is all the slow-mo. Like, you could cut a half hour worth of slow-mo and that would cut half an hour out of the runtime. I also think most of the epilogue, I mean, maybe this is paid off for him, that he gets to, if he does get to make Justice League 2 now, the epilogue now is required. But
what's canon now? Which movie's
That's a good
canon?
question.
Well, okay, so it's been kind of, they're playing fast and loose. It's almost like they're doing in the comics now, right? It's like I've lost track of their names with they're trying not to give Mark Waid and Grant Morrison credit. Hyper Time now it's called, oh shoot. There's a thing that I've read about that really bothers me, like
the something verse. It's the something verse, the linear verse.
The linear verse, in which everything that's happened has happened because they did start in 1938. Like that it is the same Clark Kent from 1938 to 2020, and that everybody just ages really, really slowly. And of course, the problem I have with that is that if you're not caught in the energy that ages you at the speed of the superheroes, you're watching a lot of people stay really, really young. I know it does explain Hollywood, but it does not,
That's how Tom Cruise does it.
Tom Cruise is clearly secretly a superhero. But the idea that it's just in and out, like, so the thing about as Rick mentioned, Aquaman, Mira mentions in Aquaman that he helped save the world from Steppenwolf. So it is still there. It is still acknowledged that Justice League happened. Somewhere in between films, Mira lost her British accent.
Yeah.
But
nice one.
Yeah, that was
she's been watching too much American TV.
Maybe it's a Hilaria Baldwin kind of thing where she was just
maybe. So that was very odd. And I don't think you can very well reconcile those things. And so, I'm going to say, I think Michael joined a little late. He was just saying Snyderverse is now Elseworlds. But the thing is, now Zack Snyder saying, no, they might put it back on track for me, because there is nothing necessarily. Patty Jenkins has gone on record and said, like, even with Joss Whedon, we were paying attention to what Zack Snyder set forth. So Wonder Woman 1984, for all its strengths and all its flaws, because it is not a perfect movie by any stretch of the imagination, is still trying to say that Wonder Woman had dropped out from public view. She was, she's not known in the 80s. It's a stretch, but it's still kind of there so that they can justify where things are in Justice League. The Flash, who knows? Cyborg, who knows? I mean, because the other thing is, the question is, has Ray Fisher burned all bridges with Warner Brothers as it stands right now? It's more to let more of that story play out. I would also say that there is at least one former DC staffer who has started posting about what was going on at DC at the time, and again, how these public stories were not what was actually happening. And I don't want to go further in there because, I don't know the implications. This is another one of those stories where I go, I just want to live long enough and have enough eyesight to read the book that actually explains what happened at this point about movies that I loved, because we don't really know the truth, Go ahead, Rick.
One of my favorite parts of this, which plays into that, was the first Age of Heroes sequence, which is a lot longer and much more involved. And I had not, was it obvious in the first cut that Ares was the one who took out Darkseid?
No.
I know. It was not that obvious. It was all kind of distanced and scrambled, and you saw like there was, Green Lantern appeared. And
Did he?
Yeah, there was a Green Lantern, and I don't think the ring thing happened. I think we went from a distance, seeing the ring fly off. We certainly didn't have to focus on Zeus that we got in this one. And so that sequence did make a lot more sense. It's interesting.
It brought Darkseid into the storyline too, much more than just the images on the other end of the boom tube.
Yes, and Rick, let's both push our glasses up right now, because actually at that time in history, he wasn't Darkseid, he was Uxas, Uxas. And because he leaves, like, this is the thing, like Zack Snyder's kind of given in interviews, like, so that's Uxas is like, how would anybody know that's the difference? But he comes back as Darkseid.
Darkseid does not appear in the beginning of that film. It's like, what?
No. It was, it is interesting because we knew more heroes were going to appear. Another character that gets edited back into Zack Snyder's vision is Ryan Choi, the Atom.
That was cool.
Who was completely cut out of Joss Whedon's cut. And I know who you're thinking, Rick, is because they just put like neon signs all around to say The Martian Manhunter. And you know what? Honestly, that kind of bothered me because, I mean, the ending appearance did not bother me at all. I thought that was really cool. Like, he should have just shown up, and then he could have shown he was the general. But posing as Martha Kent, sorry, spoilers, when it served no purpose, when it was clear that Martha Kent has that kind of relationship with Lois.
It was horrific. Yeah. It was horrific. When that happened, the moment he stepped out the door, I went, that's just awful. He should have known how awful he was being.
So let us say, there are still jaw-droppingly bad moments in this film.
I read somewhere that the Manhunter was put in because they were told not to use Green Lantern in that sequence. In the original Age of Heroes, he wasn't supposed to be in there, and they kept on going back. Can we use John Stewart later? And they basically said, okay, they let the one in the Age of Heroes go, but they didn't want to have any more establishment of the Green Lantern because they're not sure what they're going to do with that property. So that's why we ended up with Martian Manhunter landing at the end. And actually, for the mysterious ending business and we're going to have to look into where the anti-life equation is. That I think he worked better anyway, but not in the Martha Kent sequence.
That's fine, because I do love having love for the Martian Manhunter as one of the founding members of the Justice League in comics, who is often retconned out because he's not one of their most popular characters.
I tell you though, I was expecting the world's greatest detective to offer him an Oreo.
That would have been a very cool moment. Although, it would not be an Oreo. It would be a Choco.
Okay. And anyway,
that's what it is in DC Comics.
To show that Batman already knew about him, and not only that, he knew his preferred cookie.
Yes, that would have been great. I'm with you, because that was one of my favorite subtle things in Smallville. When you flash back, when they introduced the Martian Manhunter, it was the wrappers of the cookie boxes that were left behind. You go, and I can remember with my first wife going like, and then it was like, just don't explain it to me, Derek. Please don't. Can I go to bed now? You know. So yeah, I mean, I'm fine with Dark Side Comics. The interesting thing too with the Green Lantern is, you know, that last week Ryan Reynolds actually, he claims for St. Patrick's Day, watched Green Lantern for the very first time. He'd never actually seen the final cut,
and he doesn't think it's bad.
Yeah, he loaded up. He had a bottle of Aviation Gin, which is his company, and he started and live tweeting throughout. And at the end, he's like, "Oh, it really, you know." My favorite tweet is, "The performance of the Oath is good. I really stand by my performance of the Oath." You know, and then by the time he gets to the end, he's like, and Taika Waititi, who was in as Thomas Kamaku, also like started tweeting opposite him. They were having a little tweet war throughout it, and they were like, he's like, yeah, it's actually entertaining. I mean, it's not the movie I want it to be, but it's not bad, which is how I felt way back when with that too. So, you know, we're never getting the movies we absolutely want in our heads. We just get the movie that Warner Brothers paid for. I do think this is at least closer to a vision than we get. You know, I mean, because I know like Aquaman is a mess of a movie. It absolutely is. But I love it because it's just so chock full of every single piece of mythology about DC's Atlantis that there could possibly be. And Topo plays the drums, which somehow needs to get into a theme song. But, you know, and Topo plays the drums. You know?
Speaking of, I mean, music in general, or sound in general in the movie, there was a lot of subtle sound changes in this. When we first get Cyborg introduced, man, his body makes so much more sound and thrumming and background hums and stuff than the first sequence. And then we lose a lot of Danny Elfman stuff. So like,
yeah, I didn't like the score. other than the themes that they pulled back in from the previous films that had existed, I thought it was kind of jarring. Like, I mean, you can give Barry Allen something a little more modern because he's in this version 23 or 20, which he probably was in that showcase number 4. It's just that every adult seemed so much older in the 50s once you were over 18, and so you could get away with that. Cyborg could have something a little more electronica, but I just, I love John Williams' score for Superman and Superman 2, of course, but I got to give it up. I think it was it James Newton Howard who wrote the new theme for Man of Steel, and I got my issues with Man of Steel, obviously, but the music, it's stirring. And that, you remember that piece of animation they did for Superman 75th, where they went from the 1938 to the modern, and they shifted among theme songs? I'm like, there is not a single theme for Superman that has been wrong. It's like they're all stirring, they're all inspiring. And when it ends with the Man of Steel theme, I'm like, all right, if nothing else, I got to give it up for the theme. I do love that. So when they played that at the end, but he looked to me like he was opening his shirt at the end to a black suit, and I don't like that. I don't like that. However, and I told Rick and Sal this before we started broadcasting, that it will fit better when Zack Snyder and HBO Max release next month the black and white version of the Snyder cut, because then I won't be able to tell that it's black and silver suit instead of the blue and red that I want to see.
It'll look like George Reeves in 1953.
Yes, that suit was gray. You're right. I think HBO is calling it the gray cut, and Snyder's saying, "Oh, it's just my black and white. I've had it all along." So
I love the black suit because it was a callback to the death of Superman when he comes back out of the
crypt. I understand. I get that. And I didn't mind it and when he was fighting Darkseid. But at the very end, it's like, go back to the hope. Yeah, give me the blue and red. It's more interesting,
He's still got the hope symbol on there.
Which, getting back, just diving in quickly again and saying, Superman and Lois, great suit in that series.
Yeah. So there it is. If I could get Henry Cavill to be able to portray a Superman closer to the way that Tyler Hoechlin is allowed to portray it, because he's got the sparkle, and I think, and that's the one thing that I missed from Joss Whedon's, is that cell phone footage at the beginning with the kids, and that where Henry Cavill, despite the fact that his mustache is CG'd out and that looks terrible, he's at least allowed to show that he is inspirational to children, which I admit, Wonder Woman at least got to do that too in the Paris bank, in the weird thing of like, Diana's just killed like 10 terrorists into bloody pulps against the walls. And the little girl says, "Can I be like you? You can be anything." Yes, you too can be a psychotic anti-terrorist killer, which I think should bring us to the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, because but I do want to say Troy Benson, who I tried to get on tonight, but he said he couldn't pay enough 100% time, is that he doesn't think Ezra Miller has ever actually run in his life. And Troy, who is a far bigger Superman fan than I am, and I think I love Superman, but thank you, Troy. That's why we're friends. Anyway.
Can we talk about one more thing before we lose Superman?
Of course.
The Zack Snyder cut version of Steppenwolf was so much better than the original.
Oh no, so much more personality and so much characterization and motivation.
Yeah. And the whole thing about his armor constantly moving, and then the whole his showing obeisance to Darkseid by having it all come down when he kneels before Darkseid, which of course sets up the big final ending with Diana.
It's also interesting as a visual that it more mirrors Cyborg, because both of them have their armor from the Mother Box, and yeah. I mean, that's what's powering everybody in Apocalypse, right? It's Apocalypsean technology.
Okay,
we haven't introduced New Genesis at all,
right?
It is all just this is Apocalypse, but Cyborg's armor works the way it does because of Mother Box. So, you may not need Mother Box to exist anymore, but that's what it's pulled from. So it makes it an interesting difference. But what I was going to say about the anti-terrorist thing is that Falcon the Winter Soldier drops a night later, or the morning after Justice League, and yes, Rick made a snide remark, and not unfair, that the last half of that first episode is rather boring. You will believe a man can be denied a bank loan. But the opening sequence was, I mean, cool. And reintroducing Batroc and introducing a Flag Smasher. He's more alluded to as a character, but there's an organization that also calls themselves the Flag Smasher. So I think we may actually get a centralized character who calls himself Flag Smasher. But that idea of introducing the geopolitics into this, and there's a comment made about no world, we'd all be equal, and you kind of go, well, isn't that sort of what the Avengers was supposed to be doing, protecting the world? But does it depend on who's actually wielding the power?
Well, that's the whole thing about U.S. Agent, and that is that he answers to the government. And when he was introduced, that was when Steve became Nomad.
Right, I remember that.
No,
he walked away. Nomad was the 70s, because that was Steve had the cape and then stepped on the cape. No, a U.S. Agent is later. He's in the Mark Gruenwald run. And but Steve had stepped away. Steve did step away from being Captain America.
I was sure there was another Cap. Oh, was that when the 50s Cap came forward?
The 50s Bucky became Nomad.
Right.
And John Walker was U.S. Agent, but he was first Captain America. Okay. And then they had a whole team. And so it's interesting, and it's not a spoiler to say because it was in the trailer for the film that he shows up, but it's a very interesting betrayal there. So I would say that, yes, I was not as captivated by this first episode as I was, say, with WandaVision, but of course it was also twice as long, and was trying to also make a point. I think there's something about artists in there where, Sam says, well, how do you get your money? Well, there's like the goodwill of people who were not paid so much as given goodwill, like by you, a bank officer who will see his way to give us a loan so we can start a small business. And, and the irony of that is the other weird little scandals come out is Ed Brubaker and Michael Lark created the Winter Soldier, who, of course, you go back into the history of comics, was Bucky was allegedly, for 30 or 40 years considered dead.
There was even a phrase. It was, is he Bucky dead?
Is he Bucky dead? Now I have to say it's Uncle Ben dead, and now I think Spider-Man ruined that. But that he, Ed Brubaker's, he created Winter Soldier because he said, wait, there's no actual issue that shows Bucky dying. It's all just assumed he did because Cap fell into the ice, and the last thing he remembered, he just assumed. So they bring him, he brought him back, created him, becomes this big thing. Winter Soldier is an insanely popular character for licensing as well, which is always important. And all that Ed Brubaker has gotten is a thanks. And so he says, it's mixed emotions. Please do not come back to me. I may get over it because I knew I was work for hire, but don't come to me. And I think that's a shame when that, like, Bill Mantlo, granted, has huge medical bills, that Disney and Marvel are taking care of him for having created Rocket, and several key things in the Guardians of the Galaxy and other characters as well. And it just seems like, I know Ed Brubaker's not hurting, but you can give a small percentage, like Marv Wolfman said out of The Dark Knight, or maybe it was Len. I can't remember who created Lucius Fox, but he said that Batman Begins paid for my kitchen, because DC had a policy to make sure that if your character gets used, and that may have changed too in the last few years when things get more corporate and AT&T owes $5 billion, that Paul Levitz, when he was in charge of DC, made sure that if a character got used in another media, you got some kind of payment, because at that point you could track who had created those characters.
Right.
So it's just it's bothersome.
In that line, when they brought Winter Soldier forward and they had Cap die, and they had Winter Soldier become Cap, he had the very controversial gun on his hip that we saw on the hip of the new government approved Captain America at the end of the Falcon and Winter Soldier.
Yeah, so it's going to be an interesting conversation. The other thing that I want to talk with that show, and Sal brought up Superman and Lois too. We've got DC doing this nice work over on CW, which we've got our pros and cons about it. Ultimately, it's still a CW show, and its audience, even though it's an older idea of Superman and Lois, their parents, it's about those twins. It's about the teen audience that's going to watch it. It's not for me. Okay. But with Falcon and the Winter Soldier, it was meant to be the first Marvel Studios show on Disney Plus, and then COVID-19 shut down filming. And so WandaVision, because it was a lot of soundstage work and could isolate a little better, because I think Falcon and the Winter Soldier was in Bulgaria and Romania, and a lot of places that were having a difficult time keeping control of the COVID-19 virus. The WandaVision ended up being first, and the take I'm saying is both of these shows do directly address that the effects of the blip or the snap, depending on where you are, is that one of the problems that Sam Wilson has is he literally disappeared for 5 years and he did not exist. And that comes out of the end of WandaVision, but I think this is going to more directly, although WandaVision did talk about it with Monica Rambeau, like coming back into existence and missing her mother's death. That in this case, it is again more direct in the show. I think being more on the ground and more, for what it's worth, reality based, is going to be dealing more with that effect. You're going to see a lot of people that are doing what happens when people disappeared for 5 years.
I really appreciate that, and the MCU's really done a good job of that throughout their series, even from the first Avengers movie, where the fact that New York got invaded, people were talking about it in later films, and then there was the technology that was being sold in the Spider-Man movie, and that.
And there's a short on one of the DVDs too, with not Kat Dennings. There's one about people doing the black market before Spider-Man did it.
Mm-hmm. They're doing a better job of it than they ever did in the comics. In the comics, you have an invasion one month, and the next month, nobody talks about the fact that there were Skrulls everywhere, or you had spaceships in the sky raining fire down on New York. Those are big stories, and they should.
Sometimes they remember they have damage control as an organization. Sometimes
when they need to bring that book back. Yeah.
So that was. I think there'll be more to see. I'm going to get more interested in Falcon and the Winter Soldier because we're going to see Baron Zemo in his mask. I don't think they're going to call him Baron, but he will be at least Helmut Zero, and he's wearing that purple mask. I still think there was in a trailer, it looked like Sin, who in the comics was Red Skull's daughter.
Right.
Seems to be a possibility there. And I'm sure there'll be more characters because once you're introducing John Walker, there's you could have that. Is it Jack Roper? No, it can't be Jack Roper. Maybe it is. Jack Roper is the 19 Jack Tripper, because remember he was always tripping over things. Mr. Roper, and yes, he was always roping Jack into his schemes, and Jack was always tripping over things. But that Jack, so I think it's Jack Roper. Somebody can correct me. Who became Nomad, but was the 1950s Bucky substitute. He might pop up. There's more, and we can tie this into in comics for Captain America's 80th anniversary. They're doing the United States of Captain America as a comic series in which they're introducing an LGBTQ captain, because the idea is that if you're a character that inspirational, you're going to that people will want to pick up the mantle and make their own shield and make their own. So there'll be, including John Walker, touring the United States and seeing where people have taken it on to protect their towns and to protect their communities. It's coming out in June, but I did post the art that Marvel released on Fanboy Planet last week. So
there was a big Captain America book this week.
There have been many, yeah, because they're doing a year-long thing. But this particular title will be in June. There was an 80th anniversary Captain America book, special, and in shops this week. But this one's coming out. This United States of Captain America is in June. So interesting ideas, and there's a lot of universe to play there. And of course, they also officially announced that June is when we'll get Loki, and that's more exciting than anything. Who knows what's going to happen next with DC Extended Universe, whatever it exists to be. Black and White, Zack Snyder, Justice League 2. I didn't need the epilogue, but okay, it's there. The movie's going to get made or it's not going to get made, and it doesn't matter what I think because everybody's watching this thing.
When you saw Jared Leto, did you think, is this all happening in Bruce's head? Because he's...
Well, I knew it was a dream. But I'm also...
I mean, from the point of view of the future of when we were watching it, and Bruce is looking over and he sees the Joker, and I'm thinking, if he's just a voice in his head, that'd be cool. That he lives on. It
may be because I didn't really notice the rest of the people in the future
reacting,
noticing that the Joker's sitting on the hood of a car.
Yeah.
But I will say this, is that I've not watched the extended cut of Suicide Squad, but I've had friends tell me that I should find it because, like everything else, it plays better when Warner Brothers did not actually induce cuts that the writer did not want to do, and that Jared Leto comes across a little better in that. I didn't think that the Joker in Suicide Squad was as horrible as everybody else thinks. The problem is what these characters all run into is, with the exception, oddly, of Batman, that the designs, people want them to be the same as they were in 1940 to 1950. And if the Joker was created, first appeared in 2010, he might look an awful lot like what Jared Leto did.
Yeah.
So just like was it the Batman that had him in the in the straitjacket?
Mm-hmm.
And whenever he appeared, the animated series, and people hated that, and they hated that the Riddler looked like Marilyn Manson. And I thought, but in 1998, makes an awful lot of sense to me that a young man who's crazy and wants to ask riddles would take a goth look like that. So that's the problem. We've got these trademarks, these images that are 80 years old.
Yeah. And
it's time to, if somebody freshens it up, I got to let go. So I thought it was a good. Jared Leto was better though in this than he was allowed to be in Suicide Squad.
I mean, of the many things that Marvel may be doing better than DC on several fronts, allowing their characters' looks to update organically has been one of them. I mean, think about even just one of the silliest looking Spider-Man villains, Electro, from his first appearances in the 60s to what they would later do with him. I mean, he lost the yellow Electro.
You don't like the Ready Kilowatt look?
Yeah.
Whatever happened to Ready Kilowatt?
Oh.
I found it because that for those who have no idea what I'm talking about, that was like a comic character that PG&E, the real bad guys, that PG&E had to do education things for school kids in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And I remember getting comic books every year, like little, like kite flying, how to make kites, and Ready Kilowatt.
Kites, yeah.
Teams up with superheroes
that's a bad pairing. Lightning and kites. That's
that was the point. Like, keep away from the power lines. Teach the kids that way. But it was funny because we were clearing out stuff from mom's house, and we found like all this educational material from the 60s. She had all in a filing cabinet and a huge packet from PG&E. And my brother's like, "What the hell is this man that's made out of lightning?" A light bulb.
I just did some quick research, and Ready Kilowatt introduced in 1926.
Wow.
Yeah. Predates any DC or Marvel superhero.
So he is the original shared universe because he could cross over, like Access. He could cross over to any universe he wanted to.
That's right. And one of his notable aliases was the Mighty Atom. So that might tell you what happened to him.
He
got sued out of existence.
He got sued out of existence, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that might be. All right. Well, Sal, I'm going to say, thank you for joining us tonight, because I realize that Sal joined us after a day of, we're not as important, as powerful as Eddie Izzard, but that's how Sal started his day, and he chose to end his day with us, and we're very honored. Sal was interviewing Eddie Izzard for CineQuest. Or Sal, tell me, are we calling it CineQuest or CineJoy?
I'm just calling it CineQuest because I believe in consistent branding.
Thank you.
It's what people know. I don't want to have to explain CineJoy to people and say, no, that's what they're calling the virtual edition.
Well, where do we fit with Cinnabon?
Cinnabon. Well, I fit with Cinnabon anytime I can.
Okay. All right.
But I'll tell you, this is a great way to start the day, great way to end the day. Feels
You're
like
interviewing Sam Neill this week too, aren't you?
Yes, Thursday night. So he's got a movie, Rams, which is a remake of a Danish film.
Yeah, Mike talked about it with us.
Yeah.
Talked about it a couple of weeks ago. Yeah. So, okay, very cool. So there's still time to go on to it's creatix.org/Cinejoy/ and you can buy tickets to see Sal interview Sam Neill Thursday night on video, and then followed by a screening of Rams. I think it's $11 to have both Sal's interview and to watch Rams. But it is very great to have you on, and because I think we promised, is like when James Bond comes out, and then this is becoming like it should be a documentary in itself. When James, like, Sal is ready, and then we go, oh, it's been delayed again. And then a couple months later, it's been delayed again, and like Sal's just constantly on deck, ready to come in and talk James Bond. And
we're looking at October right now. Might happen. It was supposed to be. It was supposed
we gave you a James Bond book tonight.
Yeah. So we did get that in, but no, we're gonna have to do a two-parter because I've got so much material saved up on this gosh darn movie, and what happens next. They've actually had time to make Bond 26 at this point.
I look forward to that conversation. We got a little half on Red Nose Day. Hope you did see that with Craig
and Catherine Tate. Yeah.
Catherine Tate, yeah. So that was fun, and we look forward to that. But of course, Sal, we don't just need James Bond in order to have an excuse to have you come on the podcast. So thank you, because it's always a pleasure, and especially since I moved. And I know we're all in lockdown anyway. It's just been like, I think on the last podcast I even said I miss Sal. So it's great to be able to talk with you. So once again, everyone, if you want to, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Fanboy Planet. We appreciate the follows. You can follow us on the YouTube channel as well. You're probably watching us on it. You could be watching us on it right now. There may be some bonus content in the audio version. And I think we're always going to try to do something like that to keep you coming back. Because some of you are only subscribing on iTunes and Google Play, and that's okay. But as well, you can write to me if you have any questions, comments, commentary, compliments, criticism, right into editor@fanboyplanet.com. And, thank you. I'm Derek McCaw, editor-in-chief of Fanboy Planet.
I'm Sal Pizarro with Mercury News and happy guest of Fanboy Planet.
Go ahead.
And I'm Ric Brett Snyder, reminding you that maybe this will work this time.
We'll see.
Reminding you to use
your
power for good.
That might have been just fine. I don't know, but thank you, everyone, and we'll be coming back at you with another podcast later. Keep watching the Facebook page and the Twitter feed for that.